דברי אליי. מה את יודעת? מה את מגיעה?
לא, אין תחושה ברגליים, יש אומר, תגידי, כאילו אין לו תחושה ברגליים, יש מתחת לשבר, הוא אומר שהוא לא יכול להזיז.
אני ממליצה על כולם לפינוי.
It's close to midnight in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, just a few hundred yards from the increasingly dangerous Syrian border. A team of Israeli soldiers is preparing for a special operation. It's potentially dangerous, and it's the first time they've invited journalists to witness anything like it.
כולם להיות בהאזנה, בסדר, אני מזכיר, זה לילה, השקט הוא מבורך, אתם תשמעו אותי מדבר כל הזמן. היה פה הסתובבות חריגה, בסדר, ביומיים האחרונים, כל האזור של המרחב הזה. תפקיד שעלתה אתמול של 4 חבר'ה, אני אומר, בוודאות תצפית, עדיין לא ברור מי הם או מה הם, עושים על זה עדיין מודיעין, אז להיות ערניים, להקשיב, מה שנקרא, לרכשים משמאל, לרכשים מימין, מה שנקרא, הערנות שלנו זה מה שיציל אותנו.
כך פחות מהדאגה.
We wait as the vehicles drive towards the border, into darkness. Five minutes later, some news over the radio.
יכולה להגיד לי משהו על המצב שלו?
פציעה בבטן ובחזה מירי מאתמול.
קיבלתי פציעה בבטן ובחזה ירי מאתמול.
כל הפרטים המלאים יגיעו בהמשך, אנחנו כרגע מעריכים אותם.
So it's gonna be interesting.
Before long, the unit returns. The first part of their mission is a success. Only the mission probably isn't what you think. Rather than fighting their enemies, the Israelis are rescuing them. The soldiers are bringing 3 wounded Syrian fighters into Israeli territory for urgent medical care.
דברי אליי. מה את יודעת? מה את מכירה? חזה, בטן, גב, יד, רגל. מה זה, רסיסים?
לא יודעת. סיטואציה הייתה 80 בלי חמצן.
What we're seeing here is really quite astounding. A group of Israeli soldiers treating fighters from Syria. You couldn't have imagined it happening 2 years ago, but it just goes to show how unpredictable the Middle East has become and how much this region is changing.
Allahu Akbar.
About a mile away in Syria, an al-Qaeda affiliate known as Jabhat al-Nusra has seized a swathe of land, and Syria's army is trying to take it back. This footage is from a bloody battle earlier in the day, most likely where the 3 rescued Syrians were wounded. Earlier in the day, we drove to a nearby lookout point in a closed military zone to get closer to the fighting. We've come up to the Golan Heights, an area that's controlled by Israel. It's been controlled by Israel since 1967, and this is a tank left over from that period when they fought a war with Syria for control of this area. Since then, this has been the quietest border in Israel. They've only had to deal with conflict pretty much on the Lebanese side and with Gaza. That's starting to change. With the civil war in Syria raging for the last 2 years, this has suddenly become Israel's hottest border. It's easy to hear and see the not-too-distant sound of shelling. On this day, al-Nusra forces are fighting the Syrian army for control of the main road to Damascus. You can really see things quite clearly inside Syria from this close up. You can see the streets, you can see all of the detail of the buildings. With binoculars, you can even see the fighters. But as is the case with Syria's deeply complicated civil war itself, it's hard to make out who the fighters are and what exactly they're fighting for. For now, they've largely left Israel alone. And Israel has tried on the surface to appear neutral. But there are new signs that Israel is siding with the rebels. United Nations observers recently reported witnessing IDF soldiers allowing what appeared to be two unwounded rebel fighters into Israeli territory. Still, the IDF maintains that its only interaction with rebels is in humanitarian missions like this. So we've got the three casualties in there. It looks like the guy on the ground, he's in a lot of pain. The other two seem more or less okay, but they just might be out of it. But this right here, this is the fallout from the most violent war in the world today.
אוי,
כן.
לא, אין תחושה ברגליים, הוא אומר, תגידי, כאילו אין לו תחושה ברגליים מתחת לשבר, הוא אומר שהוא לא יכול להזיז. אני לא מצאתי שם דופק, אבל הן מאוד מתקתיות, אז אני לא יודעת.
בטן, חזה.
הוא ובון. היה לו...
עוררו לך את החיים גם בסוריה.
הקוטר ייכנס אליו
אני
גם
מסכים איתך, תני לשים לי בכף יד, כי קודם ראיתי ברית חמוד, שלי היה נראה קטן.
אני ממליצה על כולם לפינוי. אני יכולה לבקש ממנו לעשות לך מוקדם? אם בזה תלוי האישור.
They bring the wounded fighters to a nearby hospital. It can't be overstated what an unusual relationship this is for everyone involved. Israelis treating fighters who in some cases are bent on Israel's destruction. But since the start of Syria's civil war, about 1,300 Syrians have quietly received medical treatment inside Israel. What's the prognosis for these guys? Are they going to survive?
I think so. They'll be okay. Maybe the guy with his legs will have a long-term treatment, but he'll be okay.
What we're seeing is a high level of coordination from the Israeli military directed towards helping these fighters from inside Syria. The question I'm asking myself is, do they have a deal with one particular faction fighting on the other side of the border? And if they do, what is Israel getting in exchange? So far we've seen, according to Israel's own statistics, that 90% of the people that they're treating have been men. So I'm going to leap to the conclusion that most of them have been fighters. I think Israel sees this as being in its overall interests, but I want to know more specifics. We're here in the Galilee in Israel. We're on our way to a hospital, and the interesting thing about this hospital is that they're actually treating casualties from the war in Syria on this side of the border, and that's pretty unprecedented because you wouldn't expect people from Syria, a sworn enemy of Israel, to want to come here to get medical treatment. But the Israelis have opened their borders and they've actually allowed quite a few people to get treatment, so hopefully we're going to get to meet some of them. Dr. Amr Hussein oversees the efforts to treat Syrians here at Ziv Medical Center. Is it dangerous for them to try to come here to seek treatment?
Yes, it's very dangerous because there is don't want people come to Israel.
What do you think would happen to them if they came back and people found out they were in Israel?
They may be killed.
But I understand that some of your patients are actually fighters from the various factions.
At the past, the first, you want to see also the emergency?
Sure.
You can.
They've actually treated 420 Syrians in this hospital alone, but they've treated 1,300 overall since the start of the conflict in Syria, here in Israel. Almost all have been men, so it's not a stretch to assume that many are fighters. We were curious if any belonged to the Al-Qaeda-affiliated rebel group Jabhat al-Nusra, but Dr. Hussein tells us this would be impossible.
The army here changed the policy and don't bring again fighters, only civilian people. At the first time, yes, there was fighters against Assad there for the revolution, But after, no fighters, only civilian people. We can see children, we can see very old people, it's not fighters.
I noticed in your statistics that 90% of the people you treat here are men. Are you sure none of them are fighters?
I don't know.
This question clearly made the doctor uncomfortable, maybe justifiably so. The Israeli public might not be too keen on the fact that Israeli doctors are helping fighters who hate Israel only a bit less than they hate the Syrian regime. In Syria's civil war today, more than 1,000 factions are fighting each other and the regime for control of the country. To date, more than 190,000 have died in the conflict, and even the tallest fences can't stop ripples crossing the borders. Have you ever seen casualties like this in your experience?
No.
But I mean, you treat soldiers from...
I treat soldiers from the Lebanon to...
Yeah.
We treat also civilian Israeli civilian from the rockets of Hezbollah. Yes, we treat also. But like this injuries is very severe injuries.
This patient is a recent arrival. No one knows much about him because he's been unconscious since he got here.
He has vascular injuries, abdominal injuries, fracture of the bones, the large bones.
What do you think caused his injuries?
I think it's more blast injuries.
And so he hasn't been able to say anything since he got here? He doesn't even know he's in Israel?
He doesn't know that he's in Israel, yes.
We head into another room where 3 wounded Syrian fighters have been convalescing since July. 2 quickly covered their faces with blankets, but we could see the characteristic long hair of Islamist fighters. Outside, an IDF soldier remains on guard 24 hours a day. One of the 3 agreed to talk to us, 25-year-old Mohammed, who says he's a fighter for the Free Syrian Army, a collection of Western-backed rebel groups.
جت طيارة هليكوبتر زتت برميل بالبلد فرحنا لنشوف يعني إذا في إصابات ولا ما في إصابات مشان نسعف الناس. فلحظة وصولنا لهناك كانت في منطقة قريبة للنظام فيها جيش ضرب منها علينا بالمدفعية قذائف وقتل مننا 2 وصوبنا احنا 2 جينا لهون على مشفى صفد.
He said rebels worked through a neutral intermediary to deliver him to IDF soldiers.
احنا وصلنا بسيارة للحدود يمكن ما كان في بيننا وبين الشيك 20 متر قطعنا عليهم عاد.
If people find out that you've been to Israel, do you think they might suspect you of being a spy or something?
طبعا احنا موجودين ضمن مناطق محررة يعني من قبل الجيش الحر يعني مناطقنا محررة غرب درعا وفي القنيطرة يعني ما يقدر يصلها الجيش النظامي. اما الجيش النظامي اذا بيعرف انه احنا هون مثلا مسكنا بعدين هو طبعا ما راح يوفر لا انه رايح اسرائيل او انت رايح على اسرائيل. يعني صار في جرحى تفوت على اسرائيل يعني من العام الماضي يعني توقعت انه ممكن باي لحظة واحد يتعرض لاصابة ممكن انه يدخل على اسرائيل. اما اول يعني قبل يعني مستحيل كنت متوقع اني ادخل على اسرائيل.
When your treatment is finished, do you hope to go back to fight against Assad again?
طبعا انا في عندي حاليا اصابات برجلي يعني ممكن القتال يكون صعب علي شوي. يعني بس انا في لي دور هناك دور كويس هناك يعني ممكن نرجع يعني.
Who were you fighting when you got injured? Was it Jabhat al-Nusra or was it the army?
لا جيش بشار طبعا. جبهة النصرة يعني مو بهذيك السوء هي اللي واصلة عنها السوء. احنا يعني معايشين جبهة النصرة هناك يعني. يعني جبهة النصرة يعني هناك يعني شو بدي اقول لك يعني تحل بعض المشاكل بين الناس ممكن انها كونها يعني اسلامية تحل بعض المشاكل يعني ما تتدخل انها تقتل او كذا او تظلم حدا او هذا بحارب حدا لا هي تحارب النظام فقط لا غير.
This is one of the top tourist destinations in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights. Up here, on a clear day like today, there's a great view of volcanic hills, sprawling vineyards, and Syria's civil war.
So take this in with you, this surreal moment of being here, standing up on this volcanic mountain. There is these Jabhat al-Nusra fighting here together with ISIS against Assad, just a few miles away from here.
The guide is a bit confused. ISIS, for now, is nowhere near here. But that is artillery and mortar fire from the Al-Qaeda-affiliated al-Nusra Front and the Syrian military, locked in a battle for control of the road to Damascus. As tourists watch the action here, so does a team of United Nations observers, or at least what's left of it. UN peacekeepers have been monitoring this disputed border since 1974, the end of Israel's last war with Syria. But this past August, al-Nusra took 45 Fijian peacekeepers prisoner when it took control of the border crossing. The soldiers were released 2 weeks later, but it was enough to spook the force into abandoning its post in Syria. Now they watch the war from the same place as the rest of us. We made several formal attempts to interview the commander of the observer force, but his spokesman told us it wasn't a good time to talk. So when we spotted these Fijian UN observers, we tried to talk to them. Hi, are you from the UN? From the observer mission?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we cannot say anything. We are not allowed to say anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nothing at all?
No, I cannot answer that.
Are you observing now? Is that what you're doing?
No, we're just a tourist. Thank you.
You don't look like tourists.
No, thank you very much for that.
UN guys aren't too talkative. They must be pretty embarrassed that they don't have their checkpoint anymore. I scared them all away. I mean, if they're scared of me, it's no wonder that they're not at their checkpoint down there anymore. Not far from the lookout is Kibbutz Merom Golan, home to about 100 families who work as farmers and in tourism. This popular restaurant is run by the kibbutz, and it's where many UN observers and tourists grab a steak and a glass of local wine after watching Syria's civil war. Ari Golansky manages the restaurant, and he says life hasn't really changed since the al-Nusra Front seized the nearby border crossing.
Listen, you're in a war zone. You need a helmet.
He took us on a horseback ride to show us how life goes on.
We go up the mountain, so we have the view of the other side of the mountain.
Giddy up.
No, they don't know this.
This car literally has a mind of its own.
Like even today, when all the bombings going over there, people work in the fields, we're traveling over here. The restaurant now is full with people that come to dine and tour the Golan Heights and enjoying the weather. And maybe also take a look at the war that's going next to us.
It's a weird juxtaposition, being over here so close to it and, pretending that you're just on a nature trail.
You know, some tourists come because of that. You get like people that want to see that. You don't have a lot of spots where you can be like observers from the side, to drink coffee, to sit by and see like a war zone.
That was another big one. The sounds today are far in the distance, but increasingly, the war is spilling into Israeli territory.
The Israeli military says it shot down a Syrian aircraft. The military says the plane infiltrated Israeli airspace over the Golan Heights. It's unclear what may have happened to the pilot.
This happened in late spring. The official story was that the Israelis shot down the Syrian Sukhoi 24 aircraft after it flew into the Golan Heights, and that both the pilot and the co-pilot ejected into Syria. But Ari says he and his neighbors saw what really happened.
Yeah, they survived and they were treated here and go back to Syria after that.
So they landed on the Israeli side?
Yeah.
Can you show me where the jet was shot down?
Well, approximately here, in this area.
Wow. That was a big one.
Beautiful scenery, huh?
Have you ever had any shells come down in this area?
Yeah, a few. During the night, we never saw it during the day. And here you see the crater of a missile that landed here a while back.
Oh, this is the crater from a missile. Yeah, well, what can be done about this massive civil war in Syria?
Well, again, I'm not the address to ask this question.
Yeah.
But people get killed there on a daily basis. The question is who's willing to interfere and stop it. You know, we don't think we are not part of the problem, and we don't have to be part of the solution. We will defend ourselves if we need to. We are ready for that. But look, we're traveling here. There's a bomb going on over here, and we don't feel scared. We don't feel like we're in any threat. So far for us, we just feel bad for the citizens that get killed over there. That's the reality.
A few miles from the kibbutz is an abandoned Syrian military training facility. A friend of Ari's brings us to the roof after warning about possible sniper fire. I thought we weren't supposed to go out on the roof.
We're not supposed, but just for a quick view.
Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda affiliate, they're just on the other side of that fence now, controlling a lot of this territory on your border. How does that make you feel?
Hearing the news about ISIS, they think, okay, thanks God that we don't have ISIS here. And if Al-Qaeda call ISIS crazy,
yeah.
So we said, okay.
We'd rather have them.
Yeah.
Everything is relative, huh?
Yeah. It seems like that for them also keeping the border quiet, it's a common entrance.
Right now, we're just about 300 yards from the new border fence that Israel has built since the start of the civil war in Syria. There's an Israeli flag on this side over here, a minefield left over from the wars with Syria in the 60s and 70s. But just over there, beyond the UN checkpoint, there's a building with the black flag of al-Nusra flying on the top. We're driving to a village in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. It's called Majd al-Shams, and everyone who lives here is Druze, one of Israel's religious minorities. We're here with Brick. He's a Druze from the city of Majd al-Shams, here in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. And one of the consequences of Israel coming here after the war with Syria is that the Druze have been split off from villages that are left over in Syria that are also Druze. He's going to tell us what life is like here since the civil war started inside Syria and how that has made it even harder for Druze people to communicate with their cousins and family on the other side of the fence. So I just grab it? It's a pretty big village. How many people live here?
They're pretty much like 10,000 people lives around here.
Pretty much everyone is Druze?
Yeah, everybody is Druze.
Yeah.
Everybody. There's no other religion people here. There's only Druze. And Majd al-Shams is the biggest village between the Golan Heights villages.
Got it.
And as you can see all the mountains right over there, you can see the road, that's the Syria. I mean, we can go over there and see the border. It's right next to the houses. There's our houses and there's the border of the Syria.
Until recently, it was easier to pass back and forth across the border. Dozens of residents of Majd al-Shams studied in Damascus, and it was normal for local men to marry Syrian women. But war and a new fence has stopped that completely. Nabik and Hanan met while studying at a university in Damascus. She was from there, he was from here. Back in 1998, they were married on the border, along with 9 other couples. So this is the ceremony for crossing the border.
هاي وأنا جاي بالسيارة يعني.
You're crying.
تبكي. كثير. ها أهلي كلهم معي. هون على النقطة السورية كنا بعدنا يعني قبل ما فوت. نحن جينا أكثر من عروس، جينا 9. هاي أنا وأمي. هون نبيه وأهله بيكونوا عم يستنوا على الجنب الثاني يعني.
And my parents on the other side.
She never thought it would be so hard to return. So have you been able to see your parents since you left?
إيه، إمكانيات بس بحالات الوفاة يعني يسمحوا لنا. توفى والدتي ووالدي بس. كنا نطلع عن طريق الأردن طبعاً، هن يجوا على الأردن نحن نروح نلتقي. أما أنا أروح الزيارة على الشام بس صارت بحالتين، يوم توفى الوالد والوالدة بس. يعني سمحوا لنا ومو دغري بيسمحوا يعني هون.
كمان في
طبعاً يعني. يوم والدي ضلتني شهر و20 يوم لعطوني الموافقة. والدتي ضلتني شهر وشوي كمان أكثر. لا رحت يعني كانوا متوفيين لهم شهرين تقريباً لا رحت أنا. أيوة وبيعطوا مدة قليلة يعني 48 ساعة أعطوني يوم والدتي. يوم الوالد أعطوني أسبوع.
Who's the soldier with the Syrian flag in the picture?
هذا هذا ابن أختي. شهيد. راح بالأحداث يعني. خطفوه أول شيء، هو بالجيش، هو بالجيش السوري، وخطفوه فترة 3 شهور ورجعوا بعثوا لنا إنه هن صفوه يعني.
Does she ever regret coming to the Golan Heights?
لا هي مش قصة ندم يعني. لا يعني ما فيك تحطها بإطار الندم. لا إنه هي تعتبر تجربة كتير حلوة لأي بنت إنه تيجي لهون أو تنتقل من بيئة لبيئة يعني. بس القضية الشوق الحنين يعني هي اللي كتير بترجعني شوي لهونيك عرفت. مش إنه أندم لا طبعا بعد ما أنا صار عندي أولادي وبيتي وصار في إلي هون يعني أسرة يعني بتحس إنه لا في شيء بيربطني هون. بس قضية الحنين الأهل يعني بضل شوقك للأهل يعني ما فيك تتعدى.
What do you think about this new fence that the government built here? Do you think it's necessary?
هو جدار اسمه نحن ما بنعرف ليش عملوه أصلاً يعني ما حدا بيعرف ليه عملوه. يعني نحن نحلم دايماً كنا إنه على القليل إذا بده يضل الوضع كيف هو احتلال وإلى آخره يضل على القليل في تواصل نروح ونجي يعني. أنا كتير بتمنى إنه أهلي يجوا لعندي يشوفوا بيتي مثلاً يزوروني هون بس كان حلمنا البسيط إنه يضل طريقنا نحن لعنده.
We're at the border between the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights and Syria. That's the fence in the distance. We're watching the Israeli Defense Forces train for a very dangerous and incredibly real scenario, an infiltration by rebels from al-Nusra Front. For now, they're busy fighting the Syrian regime, but the Israeli army knows there's a very real possibility that they'll one day turn towards Israel. And so, the Israelis try to remain vigilant and ready. These are members of a special IDF unit made of Bedouin trackers. Okay, so basically what's happened is they've sent one of the guys into the bushes. He's going to pretend he's just come over the border fence. Two of the soldiers here, they're going to have to track him and find him, shoot and kill him. But it's not for real, so he's going to be okay.
بدوים הם חיים בשטח, חיו בשטח, הם תמיד בשטח, יודעים את כל הדברים על השטח, גם השינוי, גם אפילו על הפיכת אבן הכי קטנה, הם יכולים לדעת אם חיה הפכה את זה או בן אדם.
And so if you patrol a section of the border, can you feel confident that you can realize just by having looked at it whether somebody has gone across?
כן, בוודאי. ברגע שהוא עובר הוא משאיר סימנים שמעידים על מנת שאנחנו יודעים את התפקיד שלנו.
So this circle here, that's the trackers. They've marked one of the footprints of the guy playing the terrorist.
אם תסתכלו, הם רואים רק חלק מהעקבה, לא רואים את כל העקבה. אז הם בגלל זה אני אומר, הם הולכים לפי סימנים הכי קטנים שיש. כן, הנה, נתקלנו עם המחבל.
I think they got someone. After about 5 minutes, they find the fake infiltrator and finish him off.
ريموت! 21 22 زي بوتسات ايش تستعب ايش 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 ובודק את הנעליים, תופס את הנעליים על מנת לבדוק אם זה אותו נעליים שהלכנו כל הזמן וזה אותו נעליים. מחבל חוסל.
The realest thing about this whole exercise is that it's actually happening right next to the border fence. This fence was put here about a year ago because the security situation has changed so rapidly. For 40 years, there was no fence at all, and somehow the Syrians and the Israelis managed to keep to each other's side. But now that it's so unpredictable in Syria, they've decided that only a 5-6 meter fence like this would do. Patrolling the border is just one way Israel is protecting itself from an attack from Syria. The Israeli military is also watching the positions of Syrian rebels and regime forces from up here. We're heading up Mount Hermon. It's the highest point under Israeli control. On the other side of the mountain are Lebanon and Syria. We're with a lieutenant colonel from the Israeli military, and he's going to show us around.
הלאה, שי סמח"ט, גם הרכב שמאחורינו מאושר כזה.
This remote military post rarely gets civilian visitors. and we were directed to point our cameras away from certain buildings.
Every day we hear explosions and shots on the other side. It's fightings between rebels and Syrian army, but we know there are many weapons and determined people on the other side. If they decided they wanted to fight against us, they can do it, and we must be prepared for it. So that's why this post is built this way. Down there you can see Jabhat al-Nusra. It's in the south. Khader, Druze village. A few Syrian villages. That's Beit Jan, Mazrat Beit Jan. Currently, this place is controlled by the FSA. The FSA, the Free Syrian Army, it's controlling this area.
They're pretty close. Do you talk to them?
Well, we can watch them. It's behind the border. After all, it's Syria. It's a different country. We have to observe them very carefully because we always have to understand what they are trying to do.
So you're talking with your guns more than with your walkie-talkies so far?
With the other side?
Yeah.
As you can understand, the other side are holding guns. Yeah. And so that's the way we have to talk to them.
But what makes things especially complicated is that the Syrian regime is also a threat. Well, as far as I understand, none of the people who control the other side of the border, Jabhat al-Nusra or the other rebels, signed any ceasefire agreements with Israel. They're a completely new group of people.
Exactly. So that's why we are observing them all the time. We try to understand what they are trying to do, what they want to do, what are their interests. We don't have an agreement, but when one side understands what the other side wants, you can react in the right way.
But ultimately, do you think they see Israel as their enemy and they're going to, whoever wins out in this fight in Syria is eventually going to set their sights on Israel?
That's a possibility, of course. That's a possibility. We know that we are on their list of enemies, but not on their top.
Who's at the top right now?
The Syrian army, of course, the Syrian regime.
What do you say to people who think that this works out well for Israel, the fact that so many of its enemies are busy fighting each other?
It depends, because we would like to have peace and stability. Any reasonable person, of course, government or army, would like to work in a condition of peace and stability. As I said before, we were in a state of war with Syria for 41 years, but not even one shot was fired from the Syria border. So there was not peace with Syria, but there was stability. We knew that there was someone controlling the other side, and we know what to expect. And we had understandings based on interests.
What about now?
But now you can't exactly anticipate what is coming, what is about to happen tomorrow and what is coming in the next few months or years. We can't anticipate exactly. We don't know. But when you don't have anyone reasonable or someone that dominates the entire country, it's a problem.
So Israel is in wait-and-see mode?
Exactly.